Here's your wrestling news for December 23rd, 2022. And we're kicking off today with AEW, as the company is home to several former WWE superstars who hope to have much more success working for Tony Khan. Of course, not everyone can win every single match, and for every winner, there needs to be at least one loser, but that isn't sitting right with some in the company. Speaking on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer claimed that some ex-WWE superstars in AEW are very leery about doing the job and are trying to refuse to take losses. It's weird, you know? A lot of people come from WWE are very, obviously Bryan Danielson being the exception, about doing jobs, you know? And it becomes very difficult to book when you don't really want to do programs where you're going to lose. In addition to Bryan, Meltzer mentioned that Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley are always willing to take a loss if it makes sense in the storyline. Outside of these three, though, it's proving to be difficult for Tony Khan when other ex-superstars are refusing to lose. One person we know isn't happy with the booking is Miro, as on his show, Meltzer added that the Bulgarian was given an offer to wrestle at Full Gear in November but turned it down. In September, Tony Khan came to Miro, and he had this idea which would build to a match on the November pay-per-view, the November 19th pay-per-view Full Gear, and he didn't want to do it. It's weird. A lot of people coming from WWE are very leery about losing. But anyway, they went through, and now November's over, and now we're in the new cycle, and they were going to bring him back and try to come up with ideas for him. And they very well may, and then his wife comes in and says, Rusev Day's gonna come back to WWE, everybody goes back to WWE. It's like, if I'm Tony Khan at this point, given everything that's happened, and the wife of one of the wrestlers goes and says essentially everybody goes back to WWE, it's kind of like, why waste my time pushing this guy? I've got 100 guys on the roster who want to be here, and now you've got these guys who want to be in WWE. A lot of guys wanted to leave. It's like, the guys who sign here, if they're guys who really want to be there in WWE and just got fired and everything but can't wait to get hired back, I don't know that those guys have been that beneficial. Miro has had just 2 matches within the past 6 months, his most recent of which being at All Out, but based on this report, it seems likely that he refused to lose at the November event. Miro has made it clear to others he wants to be the AEW World Champion, but there's no sign of that happening. And we can't see it happening if Khan feels like booking him will be a waste of time, given Miro's wife saying that he's going back to WWE anyway. While Tony Khan isn't the kind of boss Vince McMahon was, an argument could be made that talent are taking advantage of the AEW president, who will have to find a way to deal with talent refusing to lose. Miro hasn't wrestled for AEW in months, which has given him plenty of time to check the news online, and he's seen the reports about him. On Twitter, the Bulgarian responded to Meltzer's report about him and asked what happened between January and June. Now, it's unclear what exactly Miro is referring to, as he was used slightly more regularly for the first 6 months of this year, but even then, he had little in the terms of a prominent storyline. It's no secret that Miro has been unhappy with his AEW run, and has even liked tweets suggesting he would do better in WWE, but whether that ever happens remains to be seen. But what do you think to all this? Is a talent ever right to refuse to lose, or should Tony Khan be putting his foot down? Let us know in the comments. One name who could soon be joining AEW is Sasha Banks, who left WWE in June of this year. It wasn't confirmed until recently that Banks is gone, but her departure came during WWE's old regime, and her leaving may be down to John Laurinaitis. That's at least what Teddy Long believes could be the case, as during the One-on-One podcast, the former GM spoke about reports of WWE offering Banks a figure nowhere close to what she wanted to be paid. It could be some inside thing we may not even know about that was keeping her from getting that kind of money. So I just don't know what to tell you, man. Maybe the guy who was there, Laurinaitis, maybe he got something to do with it too. You just never know. Banks wanted to be paid a similar amount to Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch, but WWE's offer was nowhere near the 2 horsewomen, and it's reported that WWE had stopped seeing Banks as a top star. Now Banks is set to debut for New Japan at Wrestle Kingdom on January 4th, and her AEW arrival may come just a week later, and it may be Johnny Ace that WWE has to blame for her departure. Do you think Laurinaitis had a role in Banks leaving? And would you have paid her on the level of Lynch and Flair if you were in charge of WWE? For months, WWE gave out cryptic clues in QR codes that became known as the White Rabbit, which culminated in Bray Wyatt's return to WWE at Extreme Rules in October. These QR codes and videos were the production of WWE's long-term storyline head Rob Fee, and now there's been a brand new QR code. In a festive cartoon, Santa Claus approaches Sami Zayn and asks him to fly his sleigh, as his reindeers have drank some bad eggnog. During one part of the video, a QR code flashes on the screen, and fans who scan it will see a bonus scene where the White Rabbit is run over by Brock Lesnar and his tractor. The rabbit then comes back to life wearing an Uncle Howdy mask before fleeing, and the video ends with various WWE superstars wishing the viewers happy holidays. Perhaps this is a sign that Wyatt and Uncle Howdy will soon be sharing the ring with the Beast incarnate, but if nothing else, this bonus scene has certainly had the fans talking. Back to AEW now, as like we said, a lot of former WWE superstars are now all elite, and not everyone is happy with that decision. In addition to Miro, it's pretty clear that Andrade El Idolo isn't pleased with his tenure in AEW, but not everyone is as desperate to leave. On Wrestling Observer Radio, Meltzer acknowledged that a lot of former superstars want out, but named two now AEW names who are all in. There's guys here, Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland, they had chances to go back and they didn't. And they didn't even entertain it. But a lot of the guys wanted to leave. The guys who signed there, if they're guys who really want to be in WWE and just got fired and everything but can't wait to get hired back, I don't know that those guys have been that beneficial. During this week's Dynamite, Swerve in Our Glory was finished for good when Strickland orchestrated an attack on Lee by Parker Boudreaux and newcomer Grandin Goatsman. While the former AEW World Tag Team Champs are happy in the company, many ex-superstars aren't feeling the same, and it'll be interesting to see who stays and who goes when contracts expire. Now last week, Mandy Rose was released from WWE after the company learned of the content being shared with subscribers on her website. Given the fortune Rose has made on her site, both before and after her release, there's been questions as to whether she'll wrestle again, and Deonna Purrazzo certainly hopes she does. In an interview with the Metro, the two-time Knockouts champion spoke about Rose and would love to have her in Impact Wrestling. "I'm gonna open the door and welcome her in. I think that the Mandy Rose that came to NXT a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, to the Mandy Rose we see today has been a complete evolution of Mandy Rose. To see her in a different light and on a different platform and see what else she can do without the WWE confines is going to reinvent her again. Obviously, we can't speculate what she's gonna do or what her mindset is. If she wants to wrestle or if she doesn't want to wrestle, it wouldn't be fair to. But if she chooses to wrestle, I want to wrestle her." Purrazzo isn't alone in this, as Tommy Dreamer has also expressed interest in Rose joining Impact when her non-compete clause with WWE expires. After proving herself in NXT, Rose will be a hot commodity when she becomes a free agent, but where she goes next, if she wrestles at all, is a decision that only Mandy Rose can make. Would you like to see Mandy Rose in Impact? Or can you think of somewhere better for her? Sound off in the comments. Back to AEW, as the backstage area is always busy at shows, and you never know who may turn up behind the scenes. For this week's Dynamite in San Antonio, Texas, former WWE superstars Rodney Mack and Jazz made the trip to the show and were spotted backstage by talent. Before the show began, Justin Roberts acknowledged the two's presence to the crowd, but they weren't the only notable names. PW Insider reports that Thunder Rosa was also backstage at this week's Dynamite, but she didn't appear in front of the crowd, and the crowd weren't told of her presence. Jazz, Mack, and Rosa run a wrestling school together called the Dog Pound Dojo in San Antonio, and perhaps this week is a sign of any of the three doing more with AEW in the near future. Fans didn't see Thunder Rosa on AEW TV this week, but one person they did see is Rick Ross, who had some choice language during his segment. During his segment with Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland, Ross dropped a huge F-bomb that shocked fans, but he's not exactly what you'd call remorseful. After calling Lee a big Ross addressed his use of language on the latest Busted Open Radio, saying, "It was real cool being back on AEW TV. I got close on Keith Lee and realized how big his traps was. Me up close to him, he looks like he weighs 23, 60, 370. He's a big he is. He's a big I'm the biggest boss in the game, so no one can tell me what to say." The rapper may consider himself the biggest boss, but we're not sure how AEW's actual boss feels about his profanity this week, so it may be some time before Tony Khan books Rick Ross again. We are just 2 days away from Christmas Day, a time that's meant to be spent with family and loved ones and eating far too much food. Last week, WWE pre-taped tonight's episode of SmackDown in advance, and there's been rumors that next week's Raw won't be a live show either. Fightful Select has now confirmed that this is the case, and that the December 26th episode will be a best-of show, featuring clips and matches from the biggest parts of 2022. While the superstars won't be on TV, they'll still be wrestling at live events, including inside MSG, and a source explained that live events require fewer people and fewer backstage teams, giving more people time off to spend with their loved ones. One top talent called the decision to give superstars a good move leading into John Cena's return on the December 30th SmackDown and the first Raw of the new year, adding that talent are reimbursed very well for working over the holiday season. Fans won't get new WWE content on next week's Raw, but it's all to give superstars and crew members some much-deserved time off at this festive time. In 2005, following the shocking and sudden death of Eddie Guerrero, WWE introduced their wellness policy to control what talents are putting in their bodies. For years, the rules have been that a superstar's first violation earns a 30-day suspension, their second earns 60 days, and a third is an immediate release, but that's all changed. When a fan on the Wrestling Observer forums brought up Riddle, who is serving what is believed to be a 60-day suspension, they said that if he fails the policy one more time, then he'll be released. In response, Dave Meltzer said that the rules have been changed, thanks in part to the wrestling war with AEW, as some top superstars have 2 violations and would become free agents if they failed again. Meltzer added that the changes also mean that superstars wanting to leave WWE can't just deliberately violate the wellness policy to ensure the release anymore, again, keeping them from AEW. It's unclear how the policy has been changed, but talent with 2 violations aren't in much danger of being released, proof that AEW is proving to be competition, at least when it comes to signing talent. One name whose future remains uncertain is CM Punk, who hasn't been seen in AEW since the now infamous All Out pay-per-view. Many AEW names have kept quiet about Punk in the months since the Backstage fight, but he'll be the subject of conversation during Dax Harwood's upcoming podcast. It was confirmed this week that Harwood will be hosting the FTR podcast with co-host Matt Kuhn, which will be replacing the Gentleman Villain podcast now that William Regal is returning to WWE. On Twitter, Harwood confirmed the first episode's release date as December 29th and shared pictures of Punk, indicating that he will have a role with this episode. It's unclear if Punk will be on the show or just the subject of conversation. And will you be tuning in to the FTR podcast's coverage of the former world champion? Let us know below. Earlier this month, Michael Mansury signed with AEW, bringing over a decade of experience with WWE to Tony Khan's company. Mansury worked from 2009 to 2020 as WWE's Vice President of Global Television Production, and now we know what caused him to step away. Speaking on the sessions, Mansury said how at the time of his WWE departure, he felt like he wasn't developing in his career any further. Mansury added that it was always implied that he would be the successor to Kevin Dunn, who has shown no signs of leaving WWE, and said he knew he couldn't handle the non-TV side of Dunn's role as WWE's head of production. The now AEW executive producer added that he knew he was capable of more than what he was doing, but with no sign of progression in WWE, he realized that it was time to make a change, hence his decision to leave in March of 2020. The arrival of Mansury has led to Tony Khan stating that Dynamite and Rampage are set for a change next month when he fully starts his new role, and time will tell what those changes are. And we're ending today with Sammy Guevara, who recently had a homecoming he would rather forget. After being booed in his native Texas this week, Guevara reacted on Twitter, saying he's glad he moved away, and we doubt this will win over anybody who resides in the Lone Star State.